why do people buy? Well, they buy to solve problems sometimes, but very much so they buy an emotion. And if you think about it, when you're asking somebody in a B2B setting, um, come over and take a look at our way of doing things and use our process or hire us to do X, Y, and Z, or use our particular products. There's an emotional component in there that I think is very fear-based on the part of the buyer, in the sense that if I go and I make this change and I adopt your process or use your company for whatever, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
What about my career? What about my job? What about how I'm going to be viewed by my colleagues? And I know maybe it sounds like I'm making too much of it, but I don't think so. I think it's there, that emotional tie-in is really important.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is John Marchica, who is the founder and CEO of Darwin Research Group. John, super excited to have you here today. Thanks for being on the podcast.
John, thanks so much. Appreciate your having me. Look forward to it.
Of course. Yes, let's start this off in the same way that I start every single one of these conversations with just you sharing a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about the company, who you are, who you guys help, and any context that you want to share for anyone that's listening in.
Sure. So Darwin Research Group is well, if we count the failures, I don't know how many startups, how many companies do we want to say? So let's just say this is my second company.
Okay.
But we're focused on doing research, strategy work, consultancy services for the life sciences industry. So that would be like pharma, biotech, devices, diagnostics, things like that. But it's important to know like our area of expertise, where we focus, do most of our research, is on like giant health systems like Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic, names that probably most of your folks would know, big brands like that. That's what we focus on. We're technically, we just finished our 15th year, although to be truthful, in the first 5 years of the organization, it was pretty much me.
Okay.
And then whoever else that I could corral in to help out with projects or to help with whatever that I was doing. But it really wasn't until like 2016 timeframe that we started taking off as a real company. But technically the LLC started in 2010. So
awesome. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so interesting as well. One, if you're able to tell everyone kind of why it came to be, what sparked this company to start in the first place, and then also dive a little bit deeper into I guess like a quick explanation that you gave to me when we first had our conversation into how that research actually is so important for all these companies that you guys are working with. So it'd be great to hear that as well.
So for me, it was kind of a matter of necessity. So my first company was a medical education firm, and I had kind of cut my teeth in the corporate world and started a new business. And so that was medical information, medical education. Then I went to go work on a PhD. And the things that I was studying really kind of led to what I'm doing now. So in the early years of trying to figure out what Darwin was, I would say I'm trying to monetize what I learned in school, right?
Okay.
And a lot of what I learned in school was kind of how healthcare works and all different components from a economic standpoint, from a cost standpoint, from an outcome standpoint, from a player standpoint, all the different things that are involved in healthcare. That's what I want to study kind of in depth. And so Darwin Research Group was formed to kind of be a consulting firm in that area to make sense of a really complex environment, which leads to your second question. What is it that we're providing that's of value, or why do people, look to us? Well, the short answer, or the shorter answer, is the pharmaceutical industry over the last decade to 20 years has slowly been moving from a kind of individual rep doctor conversation and how they sell and market their products to a much more relationship based, large organization, not so transactional, but more relationship oriented, and much more focused, in my opinion, on kind of like the patient journey through how healthcare works now. So because they're sales and marketing models have changed, and from the way that they've done it since the beginning of this industry, there's a lot of questions about, well, how do we understand these new customers? How do
Mm,
we,
yeah,
if
yeah.
if instead of Dr. Sue down the street is the way that we think of marketing our products, instead it's Mayo Clinic,
Yeah.
that's a totally different proposition. So we need to understand, if we're Pfizer or Merck, one of these big companies, we need to understand what Mayo is all about, what Cleveland Clinic is all about, and how do we adjust what we do to provide to help them provide better patient care.
Mm,
Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It's so awesome because it's such a reoccurring pattern with so many companies that I've spoken with on the podcast, outside the podcast, just all over in general. I would say that, and let me know if you agree with this. I would say that about 70 to 80% of the companies that I speak with, they have a great belief that, of course, they have a company, so they believe in what they do. They think they have great value, but they are nowhere near as close to being able to display and show the value that they think they have for their customers. So there's always that huge disconnect. It's like, hey, I have this amazing thing. Please get it because it's going to help you. And then the customer looking into them is like, I don't see the value that you're telling me that you have. So there's always that bridge to cross, and being able to close that gap, close that bridge, and put the bricks into the right place to allow that crossover to happen. Sounds like exactly what you guys do to make sure that it's framed in the right way and it feeds into a very genuine but also a very real return on investment that happens from the value that gets provided. So do you agree with that at all, or do you completely disagree?
I agree, and I also think that we could spend an hour talking about what you just said,
Mm,
because in some cases, let's talk about I don't know, the original Apple iPod,
mm,
or the iPhone. In some cases, that value proposition is so evident that there isn't the kind of leap that you're talking about for the company to be able to explain, right? It's so obvious. Wow,
mhm.
this is a breakthrough. This is something new. This is something different, and I want it, right? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
consumer product
yeah.
example.
That's actually a great example. Yeah.
Um, but I think you're in most cases you're right that, especially in the B2B world, whether it's technology
Mm,
based software, other services, there are some innovation that some company is has focused on, that they've come up with, that they believe is kind of a game changer, or
mhm.
maybe not massive, but at least in a little bit, a big improvement.
Yes, yes.
But the customers that you're going out to, they're comfortable and they have a way of doing things, and they're used to buying and using this kind of software or this particular technology, and they may not immediately see what the
Mhm,
innovation is or what the benefit is. And I think what you're talking about is the disconnect of the entrepreneur, let's say, being able to really explain
mhm.
this amazing thing that they see, that their customer base needs to be educated on, because
Yeah.
it's just not quite as apparent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I actually think your iPod example was like spot on. And I'll just add on a little bit on that as well, because even though the iPod itself was actually very easily apparent on the value that they have, the framing of that is completely different depending on the way that you're able to do it. And I think there was actually a discussion of I don't quote me on the exact gigabytes here, but it was like, hey, this is the amount of gigabytes that you have in storage space, but that's not the value. The value was a thousand songs in your pocket, right?
Exactly.
So they're both the same thing, but one is
Yeah.
framing it in the right way for what actually people want and what they care about, as opposed to just numbers and space and data. It's like, oh, nobody really cares about that. But if you truly are able to portray that right message to the right person, then it makes a huge, huge difference. And I would love to actually take the opportunity here and kind of shift that conversation into Darwin itself and the company itself, and how you guys are having a lot of these conversations. Do you find that there is a lot of hesitation when you're speaking with possible prospects, possible customers, that they can be sometimes hesitant to adapt a new idea, or hesitant to develop new things for themselves because of the usual way they've always done things and not seeing the true value of something new?
I, I do, but can I just add one other point to what
Yes,
you were saying about
yes,
around
add on,
value?
add on.
That sometimes, this is really important. That's why I want to interrupt this. Sometimes
Go ahead.
the customers are the ones that really see the value, that sometimes as a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, that you don't. And the example that I would use is I mentioned that we're in this health system space. And so we profile a lot of large institutions. We
Hmm.
in ridiculous detail, right? And these things are everything that you want to know about Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, whatever, the examples that I've been using.
Hmm.
And they're very detailed, very comprehensive examinations of these systems. And so from my perspective, I'd be like, oh, this is awesome because look at all this information that we have
Yeah,
and
yeah,
look at
yeah.
all the different ways that we've analyzed the system and all that. From the customer perspective, it took me a while to understand this. It was like, well, this just saves us a ton of time
Hmm.
because it's all this information is packaged in one place and we can search and we can do all this stuff. So the time savings value rather, turned out to be one of the biggest benefits of one of the main product lines that we have. And
Mm.
I didn't see that. I didn't initially see that. And so now, of course, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
and I can think of a lot of other examples too, where the true value, maybe the entrepreneur, the founder sees something, but then it's really the customer that says, well, it's even bigger than that. And
Hmm.
anyway, so back to your that was my interruption. Now back to what was your
No, but that makes
question?
sense. Thanks
Sorry.
for adding
I
that
think
on.
it ties into this, but what was the question again, please?
It's just about the hesitation, like people not wanting to adapt or being skeptical of adapting to something new or not seeing the true ROI that they can gain um, from taking that leap.
Yeah, and I think so. If we're talking in the B2B world, um, first of all, there's a just general comfort. You get used to doing things one way, or you get used to working with a particular vendor or a piece of software or a
Hmm.
business process or whatever it is. And so you're just comfortable, and getting people to move off of where they're comfortable can be a big thing. But the other thing is that I don't think we talk about this enough. Why do people buy? Well, they buy to solve problems sometimes, but very much so they buy an emotion. And if you think about it, when you're asking somebody in a B2B setting, um, come over and take a look at our way of doing things and use our process or hire us to do X, Y, and Z
Hmm.
or use our particular products. There's an emotional component in there that I think is very fear-based on
Hmm.
the part of the buyer, in the sense that if I go and I make this change and I adopt your process or use your company for whatever, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
What about my career? What about my job? What about how I'm going to be viewed by my colleagues?
Hmm.
And I know maybe it sounds like I'm making too much of it, but I don't think so. I think it's there, that emotional tie-in is really important.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to have people feel comfortable that if you're going to, come in our direction and you see the value proposition, we're going to help you
Yeah.
show others, and we're going to help mitigate some of that risk that maybe
Hmm.
you're feeling personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And because in a way, that sometimes it's not even like you're exaggerating it. That can actually be subconscious. That fear exists. It's not even at a surface level, but it's at a deeper
Right.
subconscious level but it's still there regardless. Right. And then it's having to combat that or at least try to overcome that to really show what can happen in the results if they do take action or if they don't.
And
And
then
then,
fear of loss, fear of embarrassment, fear of failure. I mean, all
yeah.
these things are just massive that are below the surface that your marketing campaigns or however you do business is going to have to assuage those fears
Yeah.
in order for somebody to adopt a new way of doing things.
Yeah. Awesome. Very, very insightful. I always like to highlight in this podcast here in the show with every guest that I have on that business is not always sunshines and rainbows, John. So I always love to talk about, hey, how great things are and all these things. But I think the real value often comes from talking about challenges, talking about the struggle, talking about the things that can be difficult to walk through. I'll just use those words, difficult to walk through. So would you be open with sharing maybe some of the challenges, some of the things that you guys also go through as a company in in regards to, hey, keeping the company growing, making it sustainable, make sure that we are on pace to achieve the targets that we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, based on any of the goals that you guys have as well.
Yeah, well, I would say, and this is true really in any size company, that businesses are human endeavors. I don't care how automated your processes or whatever, they're human endeavors.
Yeah.
And so because of that, a lot of times some of the struggles or challenges, they're people related.
Yeah.
You lose somebody who's a key member of your team. You've got some kind of strife in your organization, whatever it is, but people dominated issues. I think that is the case, um, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I think kind of setting that aside, I think the biggest struggle that a lot of growing companies face, if I look back to my shelf, um, somewhere back there, there's a book called the Attention Economy,
Okay.
and I think it was written in like 1999, maybe. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, a long time ago. And some of the things that we think are so new and just, people being distracted and getting hit with all
Yeah.
kinds of messages and it's not a new phenomenon. It's
Yeah.
been around for a really, really long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just worse now. And
Yeah.
so whether it's getting your customers to pay attention to, or potential customers, I should say, to pay attention to your message, whether it's hiring people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to get them to pay attention. Hey, this would be a great place to work. We're so busy, we're so distracted, and we're hit with so many different messages in so many different
Mm-hmm.
ways that breaking through, and maybe it sounds cliche at this
Yeah.
point, but it is absolutely from the start of this organization our number one problem. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we're working with, I don't know, 16, I think at this point, of the top 20 life
Mm-hmm.
science companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I find that remarkable, just the fact that we've been able to get the attention of those
Yeah.
folks. But even within those organizations, our quote unquote penetration or experience, it's kind of limited to certain clusters here and there just because of the attention problem and
Mm.
being able to network and go through those organizations.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting.
getting people to hear your message,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a new problem, as that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
goes back decades, but I just think it's worse now. It's
Mm.
far worse.
That's interesting.
um, I would say one other thing, and this kind of goes back to the people.
Sure.
I think, look, I spend a lot of time working with and collaborating with other small business CEOs, just because I'm kind of actively involved in the Phoenix community,
Mm-hmm.
part of Vistage is the CEO community. And, one of the things that just continues to come up is this sort of post-COVID work environment.
Okay.
Maybe this isn't exactly what your question was asking, but it's
It's your
very
answer.
real
Go ahead.
as far as the struggles go. It's it's what are the expectations for when I'm going to work at home, when I'm going to be working in the office, what the office experience
Mm-hmm.
is like. I can tell you, as a small business, I'm old school. I kind of want people around because there's learning, particularly for people who are younger on their career path.
Mm.
There's learning that happens just by being engaged with people on a day-to-day basis, physically in the same
Mm.
proximity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Right.
know a lot of people don't agree with me on that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can go virtual and do that anywhere. But
Yeah.
um, regardless, whatever changes were underway, COVID just
Hmm.
blew those up. And now, as there's a management challenge of just trying to keep everybody happy and productive
Yeah.
in a post-COVID world where there's I think this people want to work more at home, but then there's other issues with like loneliness and
Mm.
feeling out of the
Yeah.
loop and
Yeah.
these other kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I'd say the attention issue, and
Yeah.
back to people again with work environment.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all those. And like you said before, we could be here for hours, and there's so much that I would want to add on to that. And I actually will. And then I want to ask you a final question here, John, as well. But a
Sure.
couple other things. I actually had another guest on. Um, should I say who it was? I won't say what. One of the guests that I had on, and he actually had a similar conversation. We had a similar conversation where he was talking about the pros and cons of online, remote, and then the pros and cons of in person. And they each have their powers in their execution, in the simplicity, in the productivity, whatever you like to call it. But one of the things that we all came to a consensus with all me being just me and him in the conversation.
It's important. Two people still can be a consensus.
Yeah. That's that in person. There's something about it that doesn't get built on the remote. There's just something about the environment, that human connection, that is completely different. And they actually gave the example that in his company, they're about a $25 million company. And sometimes his leadership group, he's like, hey, where are you guys at today? Like, hey, what's going on? XYZ is like, oh, actually, we are all in a retreat, like butting heads together, like really making sure that we're strategizing and planning. It's like, oh, that's really, really awesome. So like, it's that built-in culture that even though there is a remote aspect, it kind of trickles down back to that in person, because there's so much value in that interaction that happened. And then you also talked about attention, which is something that I'll use the word passion. It's something I'm very passionate about, because so many people in business, they say, hey, time is our most valuable asset, but it's not. It's attention. Because if I'm giving you my time, right? Yeah, John, keep talking. Yeah. Like, I'm giving you my time, but I'm not giving you my attention, right? So then that completely breaks everything. So the attention is the most important thing. And I'm definitely going to be checking out that book, The Attention Economy. So I just wanted to add those things because, man, it's so true, everything that you're saying. And by design or intentionally, unintentionally, I think so many entrepreneurs are blinded by it, and they choose not to look at this or choose not to see it because they think they know better or whatever the reason might be. But those are very, very important things. So thank you so much for that. I do have one final question for you though, John.
Sure.
And it's actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So here's the question. You ready for it?
Yeah, sure.
This is an interesting one. I've never heard this before, and sometimes it's business related, sometimes it's personal related. So here's your question. When you become a grandparent, or if you are a grandparent, what would you like your grandparent nickname to be?
Well, I'm not a grandparent yet, because my kids aren't quite there yet. They're not old enough to be. So what would I like my nickname to be?
Yes.
It's probably in the Italian tradition, it's probably Papa or Papi,
No.
No, I could see Nona
Okay.
for my wife, Nana or Nona, more so. No, I could see that, but no, I'm Papi.
There you go.
I don't say I'm Big Papi because that's a very famous baseball player. But
there you go. There you go. And from for everyone that's listening in the beginning, we were talking about John's last name, and I guessed what it was, and he said it's actually Italian. So I was expecting that answer to be no, like 9 out of 10 times, and it's not. So there you go.
Yeah.
Big Papa.
There you go.
For everyone, John Marchica, thank you so much for being here today. It's really appreciate you. What an awesome conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you and, of course, a little bit more about the company?
Well, certainly you can find me on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and then at darwinresearch.com to learn more about us.
Amazing. I will leave everything down below here if you want to check it out. And if you're still listening to this conversation, you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. John, thanks again for your time.
Take care.